Welcome to Bliss to Abundance, the podcast for growth-minded travel entrepreneurs.
Hey, y'all, and thanks for joining us on this episode of the Bliss to Abundance podcast. I'm hanging out with Sheila Folk, who is the CEO and founder of Travel Industry Solutions. She is doing some big things. In all my time in the travel industry, I had never thought about some of the things that she is doing. And so I am learning a lot just by hanging out with her and talking with her. And I can't wait for you all to hear more about what she has going on and what she has to teach you. So before we dive deep into this subject, the DIYing your legal and the dangers of DIYing your legal, let me introduce you to Sheila. Sheila, will you tell everybody a little bit more about you?
Hey, Kelly, thanks so much for having me today. So, I spent 20 years as a hospitality industry executive. During that time frame, I had a 5-year stint with a global risk management company. I decided I guess just about 6 years ago, a little over 6 years ago, to open my own travel business. I wanted the flexibility to work from home and have actually control over my own course in life. When I got into this industry, I saw how ugly and messy it was, not only from a legal standpoint, but really not having a lot of the frameworks to run our back office. So, things that would help us to not only be professional, look professional, have authority, but allow us to achieve those profit levels and that freedom that we wanted in our life, or that I wanted in my life. So, having been experienced in operational efficiency and obviously having this risk background, I quickly got to work and I started documenting a lot of the things that I was hearing my customers say, noise inside of the industry, and then really just using my own intuition, right? And common sense to set up my business for success so that all of my hard work that I was doing was not for naught. If something happened legally to me, like I made a mistake. What happens if I make a mistake? What happens if I say the wrong thing? And sure enough, all of these systems and solutions worked quite well for me because I grew my agency to $8 million in revenue in 2 years with just 2 people.
That's unbelievable, number one, and amazing. But like, I think it's so important for people to understand, like at Wanderlust Campus, we are trying to be industry disruptors. And when you come from an outside corporate or even in an online business space and come into the travel industry, it is very quickly recognized, or at least it was for me, because I was in the travel industry, then I went out of the travel industry, and now I came back into working it in a different way. And understanding how far behind some of our things and the systems and the software that we had historically been given to work with were and compared to everybody else.
Well, you know what, Kelly, though, the hospitality sector in general has been 15 to 20 years behind other industries, having spent 20 years inside of that industry, working with technology companies, product suppliers, hotels, DMCs, you name it. This was always a huge pain point for those working inside of the industry. And so it was really no surprise to me that they were really far behind inside of the travel sector itself, the travel agency sector. But what really surprised me most was the complexity of this business. I've been in very high level roles inside of global companies. I've worked in startups. And I have never, ever worked inside of an industry where the expectation of our knowledge is so great, and the lack of training and tools and business resources is there. And, this is why we really love working with COV and a lot of the COV graduates, because I wish I knew about COV when I started. I see the
Same.
difference I mean,
Same.
it's
Yeah.
huge. It's a huge difference in the preparedness of the
Right.
agents. I mean, oh my gosh, I would have just been light years ahead, and then having solutions like we developed in TIS to
Yeah.
piggyback and take it a
Yeah.
step further would
Yeah.
have been crazy
Well,
amazing for me.
yeah, I say this often to people. First off, when you come into the industry, you don't know what you don't know. And so this idea that like because essentially it's like I've enjoyed planning vacations for myself. I mean, people can see, you can see my ears back here. Like I was a Disney girl. Like we were APs at Disney before I started planning Disney travel. I knew how to plan the travel. I knew how to do the Disney thing, right? But so I'm like, oh, I can do this. And it was true. I could do this. But what you're talking about, the interest,
Intricacies.
sorry,
Yeah.
this is listen, if you know me, you know that I'm gonna mispronounce a word and I'm not gonna edit that out because it's just who I am. So yes, that word of the um of the business, I had no idea. And I was not provided training from the agency I was with. None. It was like thrown to the wolves. But I don't even think they knew. That's if I'm being completely honest. I can be frustrated from the lack of support and training that I got from them, but I also don't think they knew what to do, how to train us, or that they even knew some of these things that we're going to talk about today. And like exactly what you're saying, I wish I had known about careers on vacation. I say often to clients, I'm like, if I had had these resources in front of me, I may not have left being a travel agent. I'm kind of glad I did because I like what I do in the industry now, but I may not have left because of frustration and all of the feelings like this. But our people our people are not going to have this because they do have Cyndi and Wanderlust Campus and TIS and Bliss to Abundance podcast and our YouTube channels and all of the things that we are doing for them. And so let's dive into this info because number one, it is business saving if something happens.
Mhm.
And number two, it is such a peace of mind to know that it's managed. So like let's say that you are starting your agency all over again. You're getting ready to get going, but you do have the info that you have. What is the first thing that you would protect yourself? Like how would you protect your business in that legal stance as you get started?
Well, I think the first thing is you need to think about protecting yourself, right?
Mm,
Because um, you don't want to go into a business, any business, whether it's a small business and you're working from home, or you want to grow into a medium or large size business. You really need to think about protecting yourself. So, the first thing that you should do is set up an LLC. I
yeah.
can't tell you how many agents say, I'm just dabbling in this, or I'm going to see if it works out for me, and I'll book a dozen trips and see if I like it, or I'm just doing it part time and I'm doing it for friends and family. The reality is that you can become liable. You don't want to become personally sued and have your assets attached to that lawsuit. So you really need to have an LLC, not only from a legal protection but from a professional standpoint, you are a business. I always say to people out in the industry when I hear chatter is, are you playing business or are
Mm,
you in business?
for sure. For sure. And I think that that's a hard mindset to wrap around, especially when you love what you do. Number one, because I feel like, especially some of us were trained that work, going to work meant that you were, I have to go to work and then I get off and I can come enjoy what I do. But like when you fall in love with what you do, it starts to feel like, well, this is just fun. And you kind of let that other stressful stuff go a little bit. But
Yeah.
I have a question on the LLC. Do all, like, if you are under a host, that's still an LLC, right? Because you're an independent contractor. Is that how that works?
You should form an LLC, and your LLC is an independent contractor underneath your host agency. These are the best practices that we preach to our customers, but it's good business practice in general, regardless of the industry that you're in. If you want to start up a business, the first step is to set up an LLC for yourself. There's a few other things too that I think that agents make mistakes on, and they really should pay attention to it when they're setting up their business. E&O insurance. Even if your host agency is offering E&O insurance, there are a lot of intricacies around it. Who's going to be named in the suit? Is the host agency named? Are you named? Are you both named? If you're relying on a host agency to give you E&O insurance, has their policy limit been maxed out because they have so many agents underneath them? There are so many intricacies, and it's real interesting too, because the other day I was talking to one of the big E&O insurance providers inside of the industry, and he shared with me some interesting stats. So across all industries, generally a first claim will be made between years 4 and 5 against your E&O and E&O policy. In the travel industry, most claims are made in their first year.
Wow.
That
I'm writing
is
this one down.
huge. It is so huge. And it's because of all the mistakes that people are making.
Yeah.
In addition, they're not taking it a step further, and they're not adding cyber policies. Cybercrime continues to increase as technology advances and more people are dependent on technologies. And the other key piece, and these are for any of those agency owners with ICs underneath them, you need to be looking at some other sort of liability insurance. If you are taking your ICs on a retreat, a team building retreat, and something happens to one of those ICs, are you protected? I'm not an insurance agent, but I've had enough conversations with
Right.
insurance agents to know that while many ICs, they will think of E&O insurance, they're not thinking about the other areas of their business when it comes to insurance.
Sure, but when it comes to that, insurance specifically as an IC, like I don't have experience as an agency owner, but I do have experience as an IC. And I don't think that we know what questions to ask the owner about theirs. And I think there's just this level of, first off, it's hard to even imagine that when you're planning vacations, especially as you enter the industry, what is someone going to sue me for? Why would they, like, this is not anything that I need to be worried about, but it is, and it's not a pleasant topic, so we don't want to talk about it, but like it has to be talked about. But then the other thing is not understanding insurance enough to know what questions to ask. Just like when you just mentioned, um, is their policy maxed out because they have so many agents? Or all of the little details of like, are you naming yourself as, like, how do you put your name in there so that you're covered under their insurance? Because if you've been corresponding with them via email and you haven't listened, you know what I mean? Like all of those pieces play into the part of E&O insurance. And I don't think I don't think especially new agents are understanding what a big deal that is.
Well, I'll tell you, a very good friend of mine in the industry was under a large organization, a host agency, and she needed to make a claim. And she was under the impression that their E&O insurance would cover her. Well, lo and behold, the claims, they had maxed out their coverages, that particular host agency. So they couldn't submit another claim. And she was out. One mistake on a booking. Let's say you make a mistake on an airline reservation and you have a hotel, you have tours, you have transfers, maybe there's a cruise tied to it. think about the financial impact that
Mhm.
one mistake could make across your business. And I will tell you that there are a lot of insurers that are pulling out of the travel industry because of the high level of risk.
Did
And
hear that.
so going with an insurance company who is actually the money backer of their product is an important consideration to make. Asking those questions, understanding your booking activities. Are you truly a travel agent or do you fall in that tour
Tour
operator?
operator. See, again, this is what I have learned. I did it for so many years, and I have learned about this as I have come into the Wanderlust campus universe and the differences and making sure that your insurance falls under the right one. Because again, like things that we never thought of, like,
Yeah, right. I mean, are you booking mostly FITs and they make up more than 50% of your business? Well, then it's very likely the insurance company is going to put you into tour operator status because their risk exposure is great if an error occurs because you have all of these downstream components that are affected. So making sure that you really ask the right questions, and not everybody will insure as a tour operator. Berkshire Hathaway does. They insure both travel agents, and I'm giving them a little bit of a plug, but they insure travel agents and operators, and their money backs their product. So sorry for the plug, but they are a
no.
really great one to look at. Don't look at just the cost of the premium. So the E&O insurance and other insurances are really important. And I would say not having legal contracts. I mean, that's huge. Not having and not reviewing the legal contracts that you're getting from your potential host and understanding what it is that you're signing. What are
Oh,
they requiring you
guilty,
to sign?
guilty.
Are there hidden caveats? Are you
Yep.
making personal guarantees? Is there a loophole? And a lot of them will fill them with a lot of legalese.
So you can't
So
understand what it says and you just stop reading. Yeah. No,
and you
been there.
just stop reading. But having your own is important. And I think that COVID was a pivotal moment in our industry. And I know we reference back to it, but prior to COVID, we were referencing back to 9/11. And now
Mm,
people look at Israel or other things that
yep.
happen in the world. And we will have more and more and more
Yeah.
events that happen, and just common mistakes that people make in their business. So, having those legal protections in place that are drafted by attorneys is really important. Um, I will tell you that we have had a couple of instances in TIS where members have said, I can't afford it anymore. I'm not booking enough to justify the cost. So they go and craft their own, and they remove all of the provisions that they're legally required to have. And then they remove the provisions that are actually protecting them. And it blows my mind. It blows
Yeah.
my mind.
So let's talk about those legal contracts for a second. Um, when for let's talk about it on two different sides, if that's
Okay.
okay with you. So, let's start with agency owners. Obviously, their IC contract is important. That's a no-brainer, and in my opinion, it needs to be fair to both the owner and the IC. So that's a no-brainer. But what else should the owners have in place?
Well, the owners lack the understanding about whether or not what their risk exposure is if they
Mm,
want their agents to operate under their brand name. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not here to give legal
yeah,
advice, but through our dealings with not only huge host agencies that license our product for all of their members,
right,
and then dealing with these smaller agencies that maybe have 20 or 50 ICs under them who really want those agents to operate under their brand.
right.
They're not understanding where the separation should really happen to protect not only themselves, but their agents, and then their agents, need to understand the intricacies of that. So that is the biggest thing that we do see with these smaller, what I call host agencies
Like a
that are
boutique
20.
agency, right?
Yeah, right. A little
Yeah.
boutique agency. We
Yeah.
see that all of the time. They don't have the necessary protections. Also, the data and privacy policies are
Mm,
huge, and
yeah.
people, they go to these general sites, or they rely on, Google's policy, which is protecting Google. It's not protecting
Right.
you. It's just they're not specific to the industry and the activities that these agents are doing. Um, I can't tell you how many bills we monitor on a monthly basis as it relates to data and privacy protection. It's enormous. It's a big undertaking, and we are always trying to think ahead, be forward thinking about the what ifs, what's coming down the pike. Interestingly enough, I was on a panel, or I was listening to, I'm sorry, I was on a panel for this one group, and they had a separate panel, and it was made up of some industry lawyers. And they were like, yeah, this was like literally like a month ago, less than a month ago. And they said, yeah, there's this new thing out right now with copyright infringement. And I like to listen to what other people are saying in the industry. And I thought, we've been talking about this and hammering this home for 2 years. This isn't new. It's just becoming more sophisticated and advanced.
Yeah.
And that's just a
So,
couple of things.
okay. And so those are the owners. What about individual ICs or solopreneur, even when they're independent,
Mhm.
dealing with the client individually? Like, what types of legal things are we not thinking? Because let me just be honest with you. When I was an agent, I sent, I'm almost embarrassed to even tell you this. So, like,
It's
judgment
okay.
free zone,
Share. We're in a safe place.
judgment free zone. And all y'all listening, no judge, because I didn't, you do better when you know better. But like, all I sent was, and this was me made up, like someone who has just good on Canva, sending them a Canva view only doc of like terms and conditions that I had just BS'd myself, right? Like that I had just made up. Nobody signed anything or anything to that extent. Like it was very, very kindergarten level. But like what should we be sending? Like obviously terms and conditions have got to be a thing, right? Like, but is there what type of stuff?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to say give yourself some grace. And this is an issue with education inside of our industry. There's no
Yeah,
barrier to entry for our industry.
and I was
And
the only one doing that in my agency anyway. This was just on me, and it was because I had dealt with clients who were
yeah,
grouchy.
right. Right. Well, give yourself some grace, but we're not educating new entrants into this industry enough about the risk exposure that they really do have for their business. But there are core agreements that every travel advisor should have. They should have a terms and conditions. Now, in TIS, we use what's called a travel services agreement. So what that is a single page document that your client signs that links to your 13-page terms and conditions. So think of it like when you go online to make a purchase at an online retailer. You scroll to the bottom before you make your purchase and you tick that box that says, I agree to the terms and conditions. You may or may not have clicked through to that link, but you have agreed to the terms and conditions. So some of the things that we see in the industry is that travel agents are afraid to send a terms and conditions document because
Oh, because they're what? I'm sorry, I missed
they're
that.
long. They're very long, and they're afraid that they're going to scare away the customer.
That's exactly what I was thinking. They're afraid they're going to we're so afraid that we're going to lose a client that we're not protecting ourselves.
But we're not afraid that we're going to
Lose
lose
our
our life
house.
savings. I mean, I'm in Florida, so you can't take your house, but maybe other states you can. We're not afraid to lose those things, but we're afraid to lose a $200 or $500 commission
100%, you are exactly right. And that is a terrifying thing. And it's such a mixed up mindset.
It really is. So they really need to have a terms and conditions with or without a short client agreement that links to it. If you're charging planning fees, you should have a planning fee agreement that also links to your terms and conditions. You should have a robust travel insurance waiver. I'm going to tell you right now that there's only, I think, 2 or 3, I don't remember exactly because we did the research behind it, but 2 or 3 travel insurance companies that give you this little chintzy little waiver that just says yes or no, I want travel insurance. And I'm telling you right now, because I book hundreds of thousands of dollars in travel insurance, and it is so complex. You are not an insurance agent. Your customer needs to take responsibility for understanding the coverages and also cancellation policies for their state.
Yes.
There is no way that we as travel agents can remember, does Texas require these travel insurance companies to refund the policy or issue a voucher if they cancel the trip, if they're in penalty or not in penalty? You know, what are the parameters around that? And I actually just had this happen to me about 3 months ago with a client of mine. They're a really good client, so I didn't have issue, but I just thought to myself, this is why TIS is so much better, because we're thinking about these things. And let me tell you the story. I have a client, they book a named suite on the Regent World Cruise with me every single year. They live in the state of Texas. When I presented the insurance options to them, they chose one company over another solely based on price.
Mm.
The client had a delay with their new home build, and so they decided that they were going to cancel the world cruise, knowing that they would be losing, I think it was around $23,000 with Regent, and they were fine with it. And when we went to, and it's not my normal insurance company that I use somebody else who would issue a future voucher. We went to try to get the voucher or a refund, but because they live in Texas and because they were in penalty with the cruise line, they would not give them a voucher for future use in the amount of, I think they had already paid in around $12,000 for the insurance. So I have no way to stay on top of those things. But in my insurance waiver that I send, because of course I use TIS forms because I still, have my agency. There is a special provision in there that talks about client responsibility and what my role is and what an insurance agent's role is. So you need a terms and conditions, you need a travel insurance waiver at minimum, and then a travel services agreement and a planning fee agreement. And one thing we will be releasing, because we get a lot of questions about this, and a lot of want for it, is a cancellation form that's tied to your terms and conditions. So the legal team has been working on that the first week of January 2024. So we should have that pushed out to the platform. And then regardless of if you're an agency owner or a solo agent, you need website policies. The privacy policy, if you're collecting information, your terms of use, that's different from your client terms and conditions. The terms of use is the rules of the road for your website, and it sets your jurisdiction.
Yeah, and they're like not optional. It's not as simple as just creating something on Canva or another platform and just sticking it up on the web. Like it's not it. You shouldn't.
You shouldn't, and here's why. Here are the things that we see often, and I mentioned one of them earlier, is that the DIYers,
Yeah.
they don't understand definitions and what definitions mean and the importance of definitions in the agreements. and how definitions all work together with the legal provisions. They also, I find they want to throw in everything, including the kitchen sink, because maybe they've been online or they've talked with a travel agent colleague and they go, oh, I like that. I should include
Uh-huh.
that in my terms.
Uh-huh.
And then they've negated something inside of their protections. We've seen something else a lot too, where hosted agents are linking to their host agency terms and sending out their terms. I'm like, no, you are an independent business.
Right.
You're creating you're there's no clarity. You are creating problems if you have a lawsuit. That is a huge no-no. So
And
we see that the copy and pasting, the provisions, and then the last one, and this is so important, Kelly. One and done mentality. So many agents think that because they now have their baseline contracts in place, that they're good for the next 10 years. And they're not
well, first off, it changes
all the
constantly.
time,
Constantly. Yeah.
constantly. And that's one of the things that TIS does, and we do well. And as part of our solutions, when you become a member, because people always say, why is this a membership or a subscription? Well, contracts aren't one and done. And so you need them updated at minimum once a year, at minimum. But are you going to put an attorney on retainer to monitor laws for you? Are you going to pay
Yeah.
them to ask questions whenever you have a question? Are you going to pay them to teach you how to use them inside of your business, if they even know how your business works? Are you going to keep them on retainer to think about things that could happen in the future, or to keep a pulse on what's happening, not only with the suppliers, but in the credit card industry, in the insurance industry? Those are things that we're doing. So why would you go to the guy down the street who has no idea how your business works, or go to a solo travel attorney who really, his primary practice of law is someplace else, for $750, $1,000,
Right.
$1,500 for one agreement? And they don't have the bandwidth to do all of the things that we're doing inside of TIS. At the very least, do get contracts, even if you don't use a solution like TIS. You have options out there, but you need to be considering all of your costs to remain compliant. And oh, by the way, I don't know if you knew this yet, Kelly, but with the launch of our new platform, we have provided our customers with HTML embeddable policies. So when we update our terms and conditions and you place your terms and conditions on your website, they update while you sleep. And it's based on, our stuff is built, it's what do we call it? We call it intelligent document generation based on user profiles. So not everybody has the same terms. It's based on your agency profile setup. I mean, what peace of mind would you have had when you had your
Oh, for
agency
sure.
to know this?
For sure, for sure, and just to be protected in itself. So my actual next question was, and you've actually started on it, but I want you to give you the opportunity to talk more about them. I was going to ask you the biggest mistakes you see them making, and I know we just went over the one and done, so like that's a no-brainer, like thinking that it's just one time and it's over. But are there other mistakes that you see, the common mistakes that you see them making that you want to touch on?
Yeah, so there are a couple of them, and one of them relates to making sure that you have the appropriate audit trail in place. Once you are using
Mm.
solutions, having the right audit trail is really important. And I will tell you that we've been talking to chargeback gurus quite a bit, forming a partnership with them. They have a really great platform where they work with enterprise partners to help. They have a process to defend and win chargebacks. And one of the things that they love about our platform is this really robust audit trail that we have for authorizations and signatures, payment authorizations and signatures. So
Mhm.
not all of the CRMs in the marketplace provide you with a really robust audit trail.
Mhm.
So make sure if you are going to get agreements, whether it's through TIS or somebody else, that you do have the appropriate audit trail in place. The other thing too is the notion that you're only doing business with friends and family, and
Mhm.
therefore you don't need protection. Okay,
Yeah.
let me give you two stories. Both of these happened during COVID, and the one is really impactful, and I do get really emotional about it because I'm still emotional about it. I'm hurt by it. So you may or may not know that I'm a widow. I've been widowed for 11 years. And when my husband passed away, my daughter was 2.5 years old. And I've been raising her by myself, and I've built two successful companies during this time frame. But I have I had a very, very close friend of mine from college. We met our freshman year. He was my best friend. And we welcomed him into our family even after I got married, and he wasn't married yet, and he was very close to my husband. Um, I even made him the guardian of my child. That's how close we were. If I died, he and his wife would raise my daughter. He was also my corporate attorney and personal attorney. During COVID, he and his wife, right before the world got shut down, they booked a trip. And it was a trip they shouldn't have booked, but they did it. He needed to cancel the trip. I negotiated, they were in full penalty. I negotiated with the tour operator to get them like 85% back. There were some things that were non-refundable. It was like intra-Europe airline tickets and a few other things. Well, this friend of mine happens to be a litigator, and he represents creditors. He's a creditor's rights attorney. So he filed a chargeback. I had all of the documentation in place. While the chargeback could have really impacted me, I don't collect money into my bank account, but I was able to work with the supplier with whom I had an amazing relationship with to provide them with all of the documentation that they needed to win the chargeback. And ultimately, it destroyed our relationship. So if you think for
Yeah. For
1 second that your friends or your family aren't going to do this to you, think again, because here's the thing. They canceled the trip because he got fired from his firm. And you go into fight or flight mode when it comes to protecting your family. And I don't care if it's your cousin or your sister, they're going to put themselves first.
and sometimes friends and family are the worst clients, honestly.
They are. And so the surprises that I see are, the assuming that because they're friends and family, they're not going to sue you. And then the first one that I had mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Holy
scary.
cow.
It's scary. And there's more coming down the pike. I'll tell you, I met with one of the risk managers of a major credit card, and we're going to do a webinar actually inside of TIS and talking about synthetic identities and how they're on the rise.
Well, that, and then like you were talking about data storage and all of that stuff. We didn't have CRM when I was an agent at all. So where were we storing credit card numbers? On paper,
Oh yeah.
in notebooks. That
Well, we
people were
have
carrying around with names and date of births and addresses and card numbers. I mean,
that's
it's
huge. And you know what? That is why when we, because we've been around for a few years now, but we invested in technology over the last year and built our own technology that would not only dynamically create the agreements on demand. So you literally sign up, complete your agency profile, and boom, your agreements are created. But in the process, I realized that not all agents are utilizing a CRM at this point. They're not collecting credit cards securely. So we not only provide e-sign, but we provide a secure credit card vault, PCI compliant credit card vault. So you literally, when you say send terms, it opens a window. You enter the amount you want your client to authorize. You attach all of your supplier terms. And if you want to attach an itinerary, whatever fulfills your duty of care. And then you send it to your client and they open on a screen. They can download, they can enter their card, and they can sign the terms in one fell swoop. And that's another challenge inside of the technology in our industry, is that it's disjointed. It's creating a lot of friction for agents, which compounds the problem.
Yes. Well, yeah. So that leads me to my last question for you. And that is, what surprises you the most that agents don't know about this side of the industry?
Oh gosh. I think what they don't know is that it's one of the most complex, riskiest industries on the planet. And when I speak to people with these major credit card companies, the risk managers, when I speak to the people at Chargeback Gurus, when I speak to the suppliers, there is even the insurance companies, the common theme is that the problems are starting with the agent because they do not have adequate knowledge or preparation of protecting themselves. And so that's why I love COV and Cyndi so much, and your team, is you guys are really educating people on this. This is it. We're selling fun products, so we think that the job should be fun and risk-free, but it's
Yeah,
not.
exactly. It's so hard to wrap your mind around. I'm planning the most magical vacation for someone, or this memory-filled vacation, and it's fun to do, and none of it feels work. So why would anybody come after me, or what could possibly go wrong? But number one, it's a lot of money. Like, we're not selling t-shirts. I mean, this is usually tens of thousands of dollars of an investment. And not everybody is going to say, I know I'm going to lose $23,000. It's cool. That is not the norm for most people. And the other part is, very few travel agents are speaking legalese. It's not that none of them are, but very few are. And again, it comes back to the we don't know what we know, and you do better when you know better, but most people aren't being trained to know better.
Well, and here's the thing too, and I'm glad you just mentioned this, is in TIS, we made it our mission to put all of our contracts in plain English so that the agents understand what they're sending and the clients understand what they're receiving. And so that eliminates a lot of the pain too, is it doesn't need to be bogged down with legalese to protect you.
And I want to get on a soapbox like for a very short period, and I want your opinion on this. But I think I actually had a call with a host agency the other day. We were working on a project together, and I was talking to the owner of this host agency, and we went off on this tangent. And I think this plays right into it. One of the problems, and I am in marketing, so I will say this from a marketing standpoint, people are marketing their business like that their clients are doing them a favor to book with them, right?
Oh,
Like,
right.
book with me, it's free. Like, there, nothing makes my skin crawl worse than that. But we're not treating ourselves like professionals.
Right.
And this filters into everything we do, including the legal piece. We don't, if you aren't seeing yourself like a professional, if you're not seeing the fact that the service you're providing is a professional service, then you don't understand the need for legal protections, workflows, all of the systems in your business, the SOPs, and all of those pieces. If you're understanding that what you do is a professional service, and that starts at the very tip top down, how are you marketing your business? think about what you're sending. If you're asking someone to spend $10,000 on a vacation, and for some people, it doesn't even have to be $10,000 on a vacation. There are a lot of people who, when they are spending $3,500 on a vacation, that feels like a tremendous amount to them.
Mhm.
And if you are not acting like a professional, the faith that they have in you comes down, number one. And I'm thinking about just, again, the referrals that are going out to people. Like, let's think about, like, they could say, I booked my vacation. You could not believe how Sheila had her stuff together. Like, everything was covered. I understood exactly what the process looked like. It was, I mean, if I'm going to do this, I want somebody to say about me that I'm professional, like that it doesn't just look like I threw some things together. And again, this is me. I'm completely guilty of that when I was doing it, doing stuff on Canva, but I don't want it to look like I just DIY'd my entire business, because I don't come across as a professional. And I think the legal piece and using real, actual, like, systems and forms and all of those things set you apart as a professional in your industry, which is going to change the way that you feel about your business, number one, and the way that other people see you doing business.
Well, and here's another thing too, and because you mentioned the word workflows. So
Mm.
inside of TIS, we have workflows, but here's my philosophy. And here's how we operate TIS, and this is how I've always operated my agency, is people need to look at function over form. So not only do you need the legal documents in place, but your workflows, your email workflows and your client communication should also protect you, because we're all human and we may make a mistake. We may miss sending them the travel insurance quote after they've deposited the booking, but they're going to get the booking confirmation that includes info about travel insurance. Then they're going to get that 7-day reminder after the booking, letting them know why they need this, what their role and responsibility is, how documentation works, linking to your full terms and conditions. So now you're providing an added layer of protection for yourself, but you're also creating a communication sequence, a cadence for your business that demonstrates your professionalism, that is timed out
Yes.
appropriately, not only as it pertains to legal, but other things inside of the booking process. And I will tell you, I see a lot of agents who say, well, I send out the booking confirmation and then I send them out something right before they travel. Well, what are you doing in between?
Yes.
What
Oh,
are you doing in
oh,
between? And
yes.
besides the email, what are you doing? Do you have appointments scheduled to call your client for no reason? Are you writing them a thank you note? Are you dropping them a line because you've thought about them at a particular moment in time? Everybody asks me, how did you get to $8 million in 2 years with 2 people? And I'm going to tell you, I didn't start with $1 million private jet bookings. I started with $1,000 cruises and $2,000 AI resorts. But all of it has to function together.
Yes.
Every aspect of it has to function together. And there's a balance, and it needs to be simple and easy to use.
And no matter if you have those $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 bookings, or those $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 bookings, the business should run the same.
That's right.
It
And here's
doesn't
the
really
thing, I
matter.
treated my $1,000 customers like they were my $500,000 customers, and they led to more bookings and more bookings and more bookings.
And
But
sometimes they're, I don't want to use the word better client, but since this is for travel agents, I will use the word better client. So, but just like you were saying, you treat them exactly the same, because if you start your business or wherever you are today on the right foot,
Mhm.
you're never going to have to worry about going
Yeah.
back and redoing. Or when do most of us make the change? Most of us make the change when something hits the fan.
That's right. And you know what? You can avoid that. It's kind of like in self-defense. 95% of self-defense is awareness. And I'm not sure how many people actually realize that. We brought in a self-defense instructor after I took her class with my daughter. And it's really rings true in the travel industry. Awareness and preparation is 95% of the battle in achieving the success, the protection, all of those things that you need.
And let's go back to one of the points that we made earlier about being afraid to send something to a client because they're afraid you're going to scare the client off. I want every single travel agent who books travel that is listening to this out there to ask themselves a question. If the client you are sending terms and conditions to is refusing to sign terms and conditions, do you want them as a client?
Right? I mean, hello, do you really want them as a client?
If they can't sign terms and conditions for me that are reasonable terms and conditions, I don't want to plan their travel because what are they expecting? Number one, and intentions, number two. You know what I mean?
I know. I know. There's a lot. I mean, we could literally go on for hours and
Forever,
hours about this.
hours and hours. But since we can't do that, we'll have to continue this conversation again. But in the meantime, will you please tell everyone where they can find you and get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So you can go to our website, travelelindustrysolutions.com. There are lots of pricing options. We'll continue to add other solutions for agents as well. And of course, we do have a chat bot on our website, so you can reach out to our support team with any questions that you may have. And because we love Cyndi so much, we're going to give all of your listeners a 10% discount on their first year subscription with us, and just use the offer code Cyndi, 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 and you'll get 10% savings on your first year.
Awesome. And all of that information, y'all, is in the show notes below. Sheila, thank you so much. This is like, seriously, we could go on and on because I really love this conversation. And it is, number one, it's so important.
I know.
So,
And the next conversation, Kelly, is
yeah.
we need to talk about agents who are collecting money into their agency and eliminating supplier liability. And what does their upstream contract look like with their
Well,
supplier?
Sheila will be here in quarter 2 with me, and I'm writing it down now. That is our topic. I can't even imagine taking in money for that. Like that makes me nauseous to think about, like just nauseous. So, but that is definitely something we're going to talk about next quarter. And you all stay tuned. We'll see you back here next week for another new episode of Bliss to Abundance. Sheila, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thank you.